Today we're talking about creating an experience for your guests. And I know that you're going to be using this specifically for wedding guests, but you can use these principles for any event that you are hosting in the future. So with that in mind, my experience about this doesn't really come from the world of weddings. I know it does to an extent, but in the practical application of thinking through an experience, of course I did it for my own wedding, but my hands-on experience comes from being part of the Life Restoration Ministries team. I'm not an employee of theirs, but I volunteer with them with their retreats. And most recently, as of making this video, I have been working with Heather Kim for the women's event that we've just had here in Vancouver. I have been in charge of environment and the experience for a number of years now. I was with them since the very beginning of doing women's events out here, and my role has kind of developed as the years have gone by into a more, before it was just like help gather some things that we borrowed to make a pretty environment, and now it's sitting with Heather and talking about what's the experience we want these women to have throughout the whole time of, from start to finish of the event, and how can we make this just an all-encompassing experience for them through all the visual stuff they see, everything that, any touch point in the event, I get to have a little bit of say. And a little, I mean a lot. I have a lot of say. I have the say, and then, work with Heather and make it happen. So that being said, I have a system that I didn't realize until I wrote it down. So thank you for asking for this information, because now I have an actual plan that I can refer back to or just tell other people about as years go on. So there are 3 things that I think about when creating an experience for an event. And those 3 things are the theme, the first impression, and how people will move through the event. So we'll start with the theme and go from there. The theme, obviously for an event like a women's retreat, we have a very set theme. The most recent one was Graves into Gardens. Ta-da! And that's a very clear theme. When it comes to a wedding, you might have a very clear theme, but odds are good that this theme is more so related to the sacrament of marriage itself, your relationship leading up to this day and how you're wanting to enter into this marriage. And so you might not have like a set theme, but you might have a word or a phrase that the Lord has given you to journey with as you plan your wedding and what you would like your day to be like. So just because you don't have a theme you can put on a cup doesn't mean that you don't have a guiding principle to help influence all the decisions around what the day is going to be like. So when you think about the theme, think about the word or phrase that is guiding your wedding planning. For our wedding, it was the word simple, and that really helped with the decor and the expectations of people for the day, that it was going to be very casual and laid back and no fuss, and that was what we wanted. You might want something that is more elegant or more luxury, high end. There are so many different ways to go about expressing the beauty of marriage to people and the beauty of your relationship on this day. So don't feel like you have to go and think of a new theme. Your story is unique, and you can just pull elements from your story or the things that you would love for your marriage to display to the world, and you can go from there with your theme. Some other things to think about with a theme are, I kind of already said it, but the elements unique to you as a couple. Of course, just things from your story that have come up, like the themes, the shared experiences you have, all that, but maybe sharing a bit more about your background with your guests, because odds are good that a lot of people will know both of you, but sometimes people only know one or the other, the bride or the groom. And so to learn a bit more about I might be friends with a bride and I have met her soon to be husband, now husband on the day of, before, but I don't have his life history. I don't really know what he's all about or where he's come from. And to share little pieces of that in ways throughout the day is also a great way to tie into the theme and help people feel this like all-encompassing sense of who you are and what your relationship is all about. The other thing to think about when it comes to the theme is, if you're like, we don't know, or even if you do know, this question is really going to help you. The question is, how can we show the attributes of God to our guests? And that's something that at Life Restoration, that's a big deal for Heather and Jake Kim to pull into their ministry. And the experiences that we give people, we want people to actually feel the love of the Father through this whole thing. So that's why we do gifts. When the women walk into the event, or walked in, it happened this past weekend. When the women walked into the event, we had volunteers handing these out to them as a welcome gift. Like, they were making eye contact and saying like, we're so happy you're here, and like genuinely so happy to be together. And the gift is really just a little kiss from the Lord for people to feel like, wow, we've really been thought of, and this is such we didn't have to give them a gift, but that that God is a gift giver, and we want them to experience that. So a really fun exercise for you would be to think about all the ways that you could show off. I mean, there are so many attributes of the Lord that we could dive into, but think about the things that maybe have spoken to you as a couple about God that you want other people to experience as well. And how can you incorporate that into the experience of your wedding? Another way to ask that question is, how can we show off the beauty of marriage? And it's similar because God is obviously so tied to marriage. And I think that'll really help to figure out what are some ways that you can be intentional about making sure that people know what's really important to you and how beautiful marriage is. Because even if all your guests are Catholic, marriage is kind of gone through the mud in the world. It's not considered beautiful. It's considered a prison. And you have a great chance to show people that it really is, it's hard, but it's magnificent. So that's the theme, okay? The second part of figuring out how to create an experience for your guests is the first impression. This is something that I'm really, I love start to finish things. I love bookends. Not literally, I don't have any. We just have overflowing shelves of books, but that's an aside. I love having the first touch of an event match the last touch, and everything in between, of course. So for your wedding, the first touch people get is the invitation. And instead of just going, okay, we're going to send out invites and just kind of put whatever on it, and like it's pretty, but we'll just send it out the door. Thinking through all the pieces that will encompass the visual part of your day. And the invitation is really a foretaste of what they're going to experience later. And so for doing the event stuff, because that's my most practical experience to share with you, the first taste is is the like save the date image really, but then it's the website that we send out, which is kind of like the invitation. And we send out an email with all this stuff, and we work with the designer to get the logo and our color scheme and all those things. And we think about the language that we're using to invite the women into this event. And so the invitation that you send out, thinking through, you don't have to spend zillions of dollars, but if you want to really like up the ante, invitations are a great way to get like that first touch. But on my like practical side of my brain, not my creative side of my brain, invites, unless someone, like, I'm really sentimental and I keep all the invites they're literally in a box. I have every invite that I've ever gotten for a wedding. But for most people, maybe they're put on the fridge and then they're put in the recycling. So I don't want you to think we have to spend 7,000 hours and $7,000 on invites. But the wording that you use, the imagery you use helps to set the scene for what to expect on the day. So if you are going for this like super elegant, super, luxe, feeling of for your wedding, having that in your invite with the font choices you have and the paper that's printed on and the envelope, the way that are you handwriting their name on the envelope? Are you using a wax seal to seal it? Like these are all things that you can think about that, again, some of this will be determined by your priorities and your time and like all that stuff. So keep that in mind too. But when you're creating an experience, that first touch is important. And that first touch is not just the invitation. For us too, it's what do you see when you walk into the room? That is important. I will go into that a bit more in the third point, but having a cohesive experience for people so that what they see when you invite them on the invitation matches what they see when they enter. Because they know it just makes sense that this all fits together and that this is the right event that they're at, right? And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. It can just be like a similar color theme or that's really the simplest way you could do it, is to incorporate your colors on your invite. Or for us, I took a photo of white roses for the back of our invitation, and I used the same image, the same color theme for our programs, and kind of throughout the event. I did add more colors after because I figured it all out. Didn't quite do it the way that I'm encouraging you to do it. But if you're getting married soon and you're like, yeah, okay, we've already sent the invites out and maybe they don't quite match the experience you want to give, you can absolutely adjust and go forward even if your invite doesn't quite match what you'd hoped it would be like. But yes, the first impression, the first thing people see, how they're welcomed to the event also sets the stage. Because you might have gotten the invite 3 or 4 months before the wedding, and unless you did keep it and put it on the fridge, you haven't been looking at it to really know what to expect. But that first intentional welcome to the event is key. So having ushers is really the word, but just having a welcoming crew of people to welcome them into the church. That's usually the first point of contact on the day, is like welcoming people into the church. And especially if people aren't Catholic, or if they haven't been to a church in a long time, or if they've never been to your church specifically, having people there to welcome them in, to give them a program, to help them find a seat, just to say hi and let them know that they are seen and that they don't have to hover in the back row to to feel like they're not imposing or anything. You just want people to feel like, yes, you're in the right place and you are welcome here. I imagine that's what you want people to think. That's really important to me. Okay, so the third thing is, yes, how people move through the event. So that kind of starts with that first impression bit about, being welcomed to the event. And what's really important is to sit down, especially if you don't have a wedding planner, is to sit down and go through the flow of how people physically walk through the space you have for your event. And this starts with like parking, really. If parking is like a weird situation at your event, even at your church, I'm talking about the whole thing. So even if parking is weird at your church, having like parking attendants to help people know where to park, very helpful. Or having signs. This is usually more for your reception, but having signs as to where people should park so that they know they're in the right spot, and really going from there. So you know what? I'm going to back up for a second, because part of the experience of your day is you're thinking about, okay, they come to the ceremony, and then after the ceremony, what happens? And then if there's time between ceremony and reception, what have we offered to them to do or not do? And then it's the reception. So you're thinking through all the pieces of what can we offer to our guests to make them feel welcome, that matches the theme that we're going for, and putting all those pieces in. So when they get to the ceremony, what happens after? This is why I really encourage a receiving line, so that your guests can actually have a point of contact with you, instead of maybe going through the whole day and never getting to talk to you at all. I don't want you to have that experience, and I definitely encourage you to think about your guest experience of the day as well. If I'm a guest at a wedding, I know that everyone wants to talk to the bride and groom, and maybe you're like, I'll just step back, but giving your guests a chance to just hug you is part of an experience where they feel like I'm seen and I know that they wanted me here. So there's that. But then also you could, like, if you're having a wedding website or something, if there's time between your ceremony and reception, maybe you do a cocktail hour at your venue, and you tell them that yeah, you can go there early. We won't be there yet, but you can go and experience a little bit more of the day and be a little more taken care of in that way, just some snacks and whatever. Or you can tell them about your favorite coffee shops, or you could even like put a tab at a coffee shop or something. Like, there's just so many ways that you could say, hey, we're thinking of you throughout every aspect of this day, and we want you to know that we want you to be experiencing all those things that you talked about with the theme, and how you can show God's love and all that stuff. So but let's get into the reception a little bit. Some more practical things to think about. When people walk in, what do they see? What do they experience? What's their natural flow of things? They usually walk in holding a gift or a card or something. They have something that they have to put down. And so you want to make sure that your gift table, if you're doing gifts, usually people are doing gifts, is somewhere near the entry, or just as you enter the room, that you can clearly see where you need to go, or that there's someone telling people, here's where you go. If there's a sign or something. Any question your guest might have, you should answer. So if you've ever been a guest at a wedding and you're like, where's the guest table? Where's the bathroom? Where do we sit? That's something we didn't do at our wedding, and I kind of regret it. We didn't do a seating chart because it was like super casual. We just did lots, like long tables and some round tables, and people kind of just congregated with their friends. Honestly, we ran out of time. I did not have time to do a seating chart, but I wish I had. Because when you have a seating chart, it's not just making sure that you have enough seats for people. Duh, you need that. But it's saying, we have prepared a place for you specifically. And I know that like little name things for each place like might be really time consuming, and you don't have to do that. You can just tell people what table they're at. That's totally fine. But to have your name written down correctly, make sure that everyone's name is correct. To have your name written down correctly is like, there's something about being known and being seen and being named that guests, that makes me feel special. So I'm sure it would make your guests feel special too. And that's part of the experience, is making sure people are being seen and are experiencing that God sees them, that you see them, but that God sees them. This is something that I love talking about, but I don't really have an avenue except for now. Now I do. I would love to help you figure out how to create an experience specifically for your guests. So please, in the discussion, ask questions, give me some info about your event, and I can help you use all that little information to create a very specific experience for your guests at your wedding. I can't wait.